The Winchester Model 70 Pre-64, the Rifleman's Rifle, the State Rifle of Alaska, legendary, storied, awesome, expensive. What do you do if you just can't reasonably, responsibly afford a really nice Pre-64 Winchester Model 70? What are some alternatives? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way with God at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I'm humbled and blessed to serve you as host. Bullet points for the bio in the show notes. Let's get into the Winchester Model 70. They are amazing. I didn't realize how amazing they were until I got one. I got one for my Alaska rifle. I got one after careful consideration of many things on the market, and I was quite a lot of years into shooting and hunting and even professional hunting and guiding before I got a Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. I am here to tell you that the hype is real. It is the rifleman's rifle. It is smooth. It is elegant. It is amazing. I have a featherweight 30-06. It is everything you would want a hunting rifle to be, except for maybe not in stainless steel. Stainless steel guns just weren't really a thing back then. A brief history. The Mauser 98 was kind of revolutionary, awesome. Teddy Roosevelt ran into it, fighting the Spanish in Cuba, and he was like, this is better than what we have. Ditch the 30-40 Krag, get on this. Pretty obviously copied the Mauser 98 in the Winchester, or in the Springfield Model 1903. Both Remington and Winchester, after the First World War, kind of were like, well, how can we've got all this machinery and tooling, and I'm kind of speaking for them, but it's logical. They were like, how can we still make some money on this? And they started making hunting rifles based off of that. Remington made one for a while, I think before Winchester. Winchester made one, I think it was the 54, if memory serves correct. It predated the Model 70. But when the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70 came out, it gained a reputation for being like the best rifle, period. Controlled round feed action, which I love. Good iron sights, which I love. Fast handling. Smooth action. Strong. Reliable. Well balanced. Just kind of all the attributes you would look for in a good sporting rifle. Well, they never were cheap. Remington, when they switched from their controlled round feed based loosely on the 1903, they went to a push feed, which most rifles are today, which is way cheaper to manufacture, which is why most rifles today, people are just like, I want a cheap gun. If they want a bench that'll shoot sub-MOA. Well, your answer is probably a push feed. Well, Remington made the 700, which is not a bad rifle, but it's not a Pre-64 Winchester Model 70, but it costs quite a bit less, I believe. And Winchester, in a race to keep up, I think, with prices, they switched in 64, which is why you get the Pre-64. They switched after that to a push feed. And nobody really loved those. They're not bad rifles, but they're not a Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. I shouldn't say nobody. They're a fine rifle. They're a fine push feed, Me Too push feed rifle. It was a long, long time before Winchester finally went back to making a controlled round feed rifle. The new Model 70s actually are. But they're not made in America. They're made in Portugal or I think Portugal. Not as coveted as the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. People know and appreciate the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70 for good reason. That means they're expensive. I saw one yesterday. I was in Cabela's, and I don't know when you're going to listen to this, but this is in the year of our Lord 2025. It was a 257 Roberts, and it was well over $2,000. You may not have that kind of money to spend on a gun. So what is somebody that wants that type of rifle to do? Well, I'm here to talk about some alternates. Some alternate rifles you could get for the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. My number one recommendation is going to be a Husqvarna. Husqvarna like the chainsaw? Yes. But better than a chainsaw, it's a rifle. Husqvarna made rifles, and it made them, I don't know how tightly they're copies of a Mauser, but The Pre-64 Winchester is kind of a copy. It's not as sleek. They're not going to be as svelte. I've never owned a Husqvarna, but I've never heard anything bad about them. If you want the similar thing, controlled round feed, that same kind of design, iron sights, a lot of the same calibers. You may get them in some funky calibers as well as they're European. I would say stay away from those unless you hand load. But the Husqvarnas command nowhere near the premium of the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. So if you want the attributes of that and you can't afford a Pre-64 Model 70, you may really look at a Husqvarna. They're not nearly as coveted. They're still good quality. They're still kind of old world craftsmanship. They're still controlled round feed. You can still be had in like a 30-06, a common caliber. They're a good quality rifle for a fraction of the price that you're going to spend on the Model 70. The next one I'm going to mention, the CZ550. Now, a lot of these are really expensive because there's the Safari ones. Now, if you want like a 416, all right, they're going to be expensive. But they also made the 550 in common calibers. Similar, controlled round feed action, robust, rugged, accurate. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be sub-MOA. That's a new phenomenon, and who cares? It's a hunting rifle. But if you want that and those similar attributes, you may look at a CZ550 in a more common caliber, not a Safari caliber. They do exist. Sometimes people want a lot of money for them. Sometimes you can find good deals on them. But those CZ550s. Now, the Ruger, it's really no surprise. Ruger's known for making really good affordable guns. When Winchester stopped making the controlled round feed, big giant claw extractor Model 70 and went to the push feed, Ruger got into the game with their Model 77. There's a Mark 1 and a Mark 2 and now a Hawkeye. I actually think the Hawkeye is better than the old ones, and I used to have an old Ruger Tang safety, and it was a fine rifle. I actually had two of them, but they were both fine rifles. But I think the Hawkeyes nowadays are just as good or better. Sadly, most of them don't have iron sights, but there is the Ruger Guide gun, which you can get in 30-06. It's a little bit heavier, but and you can get it in stainless steel. If you kind of want that same thing, it's not going to have the fit and finish. I'm here to tell you, I have both. It does not have the fit and finish. It's not as smooth as that old Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. They're both very accurate. It doesn't have the fit and finish. It's not going to have the collector value. But if you want a hunting gun, look at the Ruger Hawkeye Guide gun in 30-06. Most of those are in bigger calibers like 375 H&H. You probably don't need that unless you're going to Africa. Get it in 30-06. They still make it right now. I don't know how long they will make it, but get it if you can. They also made a model, I think it was a limited run for L.A.P.D or one of the other distributors, but they still make the African, which has iron sights, which is that similar design. However, most of those are in crazy calibers, but they did make a limited run of them in 280 or 280 AI. That would be a phenomenal gun. 280 or 280 AI is a phenomenal caliber. So they're not going to be cheap, but I don't think they're going to be quite the cost of a Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. I want to say they're going to be around $1,300. I think making a limited run of that African right now in 35 Whalen, which is a phenomenal caliber. It's a bit much. I wouldn't get it for your first deer rifle, but if you're looking for a spot and stalk elk or moose rifle, that might be the one. And again, iron sights, controlled round feed, either the Winchester or the Ruger Guide gun or the Ruger African as a stand-in for the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. Now, I said that Winchester did go back to a controlled round feed rifle, and they did. They're not made in America. But the Husqvarnas aren't made in America, although they're not supposed to be. They're a European gun, so is the CZ. But the Winchester Model 70 is still a fine rifle. Most of them, again, don't have iron sights. They do make a model called the Alaskan, which is blued steel, which is odd. I would think if you were going to call it the Alaskan, you'd make it stainless, but whatever. They make one that looks, ironically, like the regular old one. The regular new ones don't have iron sights. The model Alaskan has iron sights like the old school Pre-64 Winchester Model 70s. I like iron sights. If you don't care about iron sights, then not really a big deal. You might not care about control round feed either, in which case you probably don't want a Pre-64 Winchester Model 70. But the Alaskan, again, a lot of crazy calibers in there that you probably don't want or need. or maybe you want them, but you don't need them. But they make one in 30-06. You can get the Winchester Alaskan. It's available. It's not cheap, but it's not the price of a Pre-64, and the quality is good. They're made in Portugal. They're not, they're not made in Turkey, right? They're not some Turk nasty clone. They're made in Portugal. They're not horribly made guns, and you can get one in the Alaskan, iron sights, controlled round feed, still well balanced, still a good gun. Still says Winchester Model 70. So those are some options. If you are just in love with the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70, even if you get one like I have, I may not always drag that thing around. I hunt pretty hard and nasty, and the one I have is in good shape. I'm not generally a collector, but if I have other guns that I don't have to destroy, that's a gun that they're literally not making any more Pre-64 Winchesters. Hopefully one day you will have one as well if you want one. I'm very blessed to have mine. There are a lot of good alternatives. It may seem like everything today is a plastic fantastic, Tikka or Bergara or some other, how cheap can we make a gun that shoots sub-MOA with a cheap flimsy stock that's push feed, that's got no iron sights. There's a ton of those, but there are still some good alternatives if you want a, rifleman's rifle. Control round feed, iron sights, well balanced, meant to be shot off, your feet and not off a bench. There's some good options still out there. Hope this was helpful for you guys. I appreciate you listening, and have a blessed day.